The stars above Earth had witnessed many things over billions of years, but they had never seen what was about to happen. Commander Thexler stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominant Claw. Watching the small blue planet grow larger on his viewing screen, his species, the Zelvari, had conquered 47 star systems in 300 years of expansion. This would be number 48 planet's inhabitants called it Earth, and they had no idea what was coming. Thexler's long fingers tapped against the armrest of his command chair as he reviewed the intelligence reports. The humans of Earth had barely achieved spaceflight. Their weapons were primitive. Chemical rockets and crude nuclear devices. They were divided into hundreds of nations that fought each other. Constantly perfect, targets commander. We have analyzed their broadcasts for the past solar cycle, reported his intelligence officer Krevenah. They spend most of their resources fighting amongst themselves over land. Resources and ideological differences. This mouth parts clicked in what passed for a Zelvari smile. Excellent. He said a divided species cannot mount effective resistance. The Zelvari Dominion had encountered this pattern before on dozens of worlds. Primitive civilizations that squabbled among themselves always fell quickly once a superior force arrived. The formula was simple. Destroy enough of their military capability to prove dominance, make demands, accept surrender. Integrate the new world into the Dominion. Usually it took less than one planetary rotation begin the operation. Thexler commanded disable their orbital infrastructure first. Then, strike military targets on the surface. The Zelvari warships moved into position around Earth's energy weapons. Developed over centuries of conquest, made short work of humanity's satellites communications. Networks went dark. GPS systems, failed weather monitoring ceased then. The warships turned their attention to the surface military. Bases across the planet erupted. In plasma fire, the Pentagon in North America took a direct hit. Its western section collapsing in flames. Russia's Northern Fleet headquarters became a crater. China's Strategic Command Center in Beijing vanished in a cloud of superheated debris. Bases in India, the United Kingdom, France, and a dozen other nations suffered similar fates. Thexler watched the destruction with satisfaction. Broadcast our message to all remaining communication channels, he ordered. The transmission went out in multiple human languages, translated by Zelvari computers that had studied Earth's broadcasts for months. People of Earth, the message began. Your planet is now under the authority of the Zelvari Dominion. Your weapons are primitive and your defenses are broken. You will surrender unconditionally. Within one rotation of your planet, failure to comply will result in the complete destruction of your major population centers. You have seen our power resistances. Futile. Await further instructions. Thexler leaned back in his chair, confident the message would have its desired effect. Fear and shock would paralyze the humans there. Leaders would scramble to negotiate. Within hours, they would be begging for terms, but something unexpected was happening. On the planet below, in bunkers deep beneath mountains, human military commanders were not panicking. They were analyzing in the ruins of destroyed bases. Soldiers were not cowering. They were regrouping in cities around the world. Civilians were not fleeing in random terror. They were organizing. The intelligence officer Krevenah frowned at his displaced commander. We are detecting unusual communication patterns. The humans are using primitive radio frequencies we did not disable. They appear to be coordinating between their nations. Thexler waved a dismissive hand. Let them talk, he said. What can they possibly coordinate with their broken militaries? What the Zelvari did not understand was that they had just given humanity something it had never truly had before. A common enemy in Washington, D.C. What remained of the U.S. government was already in contact with Moscow and Beijing. Chinese officials were sharing intelligence with New Delhi and London, Paris, Berlin, and Tel Aviv. Old rivals were becoming instant allies. The United Nations building in New York, damaged but still functional, became a hub of unprecedented cooperation. Humanity had spent 10,000 years fighting itself. Every nation on Earth had warriors in its history. Every culture had developed its own methods of warfare. Every language had words for tactics, strategy, sacrifice, and victory the Zelvari had. Studied human conflicts and seen only primitive violence. They had watched recordings of World War I and called humans undisciplined. They had analyzed World War II and labeled humans inefficient. They had reviewed Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan and concluded humans were poor at occupation. What they failed to understand was that all of those conflicts were humans fighting humans, humans who knew how humans thought, humans who understood human tactics, humans who could predict human behavior. Zelvari were not human, and they were about to learn what that meant as the deadline approached. Dexler expected messages of surrender instead. He received silence. The humans are not responding, Kravana reported with confusion. Perhaps they do not understand the seriousness of their situation. Dexler mused, prepare to destroy one of their cities as a demonstration target selection. Choose one of their largest population centers.
Dexler
ordered, make it devastating. But before the order could be executed, alerts began flashing across the Zelvari bridge, Commander. We are detecting launches from the surface missiles. Hundreds of them, from multiple nations. Simultaneously, Dexler laughed. Primitive. Rockets cannot penetrate our shields, he said. Let them waste their arsenals. The first wave of missiles detonated far below the Zelvar ships, apparently falling short of their targets as expected. Dexler said, but then the electromagnetic pulses from the high-altitude nuclear detonations washed over the Zelvari fleet shields. Flickered electronic spark systems rebooted. What is happening? Dexler demanded. They are using their nuclear weapons as electromagnetic pulse generators, Kravana said with shock in his voice. Our shields are designed against energy weapons. Not this type of attack. Recalibrate immediately before the Zelvari could adjust. The second wave arrived. These missiles did not detonate early. They struck ships directly. Conventional explosives and nuclear warheads slamming into hulls that had been momentarily weakened. Zelvari cruisers took critical damage. One destroyer lost power completely and began falling toward the atmosphere. Impossible. Dexler hissed. They are primitives. How did they coordinate such an attack so quickly? What the commander did not know was that every nuclear power on the Earth had spent decades preparing for exactly this kind of scenario, an alien invasion specifically. But a massive coordinated strike against a superior enemy, the Cold War, had taught humanity how to launch everything at once. Mutual assured destruction had taught humanity how to make every shot count. Decades of strategy games, military exercises, and war planning had taught humanity how to adapt quickly. The Zelvari had given Earth one rotation to surrender. Humanity had used that rotation to prepare for war, and Earth's generals were just getting started. Commander Dexler made his first critical mistake when he ordered ground forces to occupy Earth's major cities. The Zelvari had done this countless times before on other worlds. Superior technology always. The first landing craft descended on Moscow carrying 500 Zelvari shock troops, equipped with plasma rifles, energy shields, and armor that could withstand small arms fire. They expected terrified civilians and disorganized military resistance. What they got was Heltha. Russian forces had withdrawn from the city center deliberately, leaving it seemingly abandoned. The Zelvari troops moved through empty streets, reporting easy progress. Then the buildings exploded, not all at once, but in sequence, calculated to drive the Zelvari troops into kill zones where heavy machine guns opened fire from concealed positions. Zelvari shields held against the initial gunfire. But humans had learned something important from the space battle. Overwhelming the shields with sustained fire caused them to fail. Russian soldiers fired in disciplined bursts, conserving ammunition while maintaining constant pressure. When Zelvari troops tried to return fire, snipers hidden in rubble took them down. The human snipers aimed for the gaps in armor, the joints, the vulnerable points that every suit of armor in history had possessed. This is Ground Team 1, the Zelvari commander transmitted. Back to the ship. We are taking heavy casualties. The humans are not fighting like any species we have encountered. Request immediate air support. Dexler authorized the support, sending ground attack craft to strafe the human positions. but the humans had prepared for this, to surface-to-air missiles. Some decades old, but perfectly functional. Began tracking the Zelvari aircraft. The first to attack craft went down in flames. Others retreated to higher altitudes where their weapons were less effective in Beijing. The pattern repeated with variations. Chinese forces used the city's extensive subway system to move troops unseen, appearing suddenly to attack Zelvari positions, then vanishing underground before the aliens could respond effectively in New York. National Guard units and police forces worked together to turn Manhattan into a fortress. Every bridge was rigged with explosives. Every tunnel became a potential tomb that Zelvari had never fought in. An enemy that valued terrain over technology in London. British Special Forces demonstrated what centuries of imperial military experience had taught them about unconventional warfare. Did not try to hold ground. They hit and ran, using the city's ancient street layout to their advantage, luring Zelvari troops into narrow lanes where numbers and superior firepower meant nothing. Paris saw French forces doing something the Zelvari found incomprehensible. They destroyed their own landmarks to deny the aliens strategic positions. The Eiffel Tower came down across the Seine, blocking river traffic and creating a massive obstacle. Historic buildings became rubble and impromptu fortifications all across Earth. Humanity was fighting with a ferocity that shocked the Zelvarabad. It was not mindless violence. Every action had purpose, every sacrifice had meaning. Humans were learning with each engagement. After the first week, Zelvari officers began sending reports back to their homeworld that grew increasingly desperate. They do not break. One report read, "We eliminated an entire human military unit. But before they died, they transmitted our positions to their artillery. We were hit by chemical rockets. Minutes later, primitive weapons, but effective when used in such quantities." Another report noted something even more disturbing. A human soldier continued fighting after sustaining injuries that would incapacitate any Zelvari. She had lost her primary arm and suffered severe burns. Yet she still operated her weapon with her secondary arm. When we finally neutralized her, we found she had eliminated 6 of our troops. Medical scans show humans have extraordinary pain tolerance and redundant systems that allow function even with catastrophic damage the Zelvari had never encountered. Persistent predators before their own evolution had been as prey animals that developed intelligence to avoid conflict. Humans had evolved as hunters who could track wounded prey for days. That same relentless drive now made them terrifying opponents in Washington, D.C. What remained of the Pentagon had relocated to bunkers in the Rocky Mountains there. Military officials from around the world participated in constant video conferences. Language barriers that had existed for millennia were overcome by necessity. Russian generals shared tactics with American counterparts. Chinese strategists coordinated with Indian military planners. Israeli intelligence worked alongside Saudi Arabian operatives. The old rivalries had not disappeared, but they had been set aside. Every nation on Earth understood a simple truth: if humanity fell to the Zelvari, national differences would cease to matter. To fight united than die divided. Scientists and engineers from every advanced nation were brought together. In secure facilities, they worked on captured Zelvari technology, dissecting weapons, analyzing armor, studying shield generators. A team in South Korea managed to reverse engineer the basic principles of Zelvari energy weapons. German engineers found a way to disrupt Zelvari communications using modified radar systems. Japanese robotics experts built drones that could kamikaze into Zelvari shields, overloading them for human troops to exploit. The global coordination was unprecedented. It was working. By the end of the second week, Zelvari forces had been pushed out of 12 major cities. Their casualties were mounting into the thousands. Commander Dexler could not understand what was happening. "We have superior technology," he insisted to his officers. "We have energy weapons while they use chemical propellants. We have shields while they have primitive armor. How are they winning?" Intelligence officer Crevona had been studying human military history extensively. What he found terrified him. "Commander, I have reviewed their records." He reported, "These humans have been fighting each other for their entire recorded History, they have texts on warfare. That date back thousands of years. They have philosophers who wrote entire volumes on military. Strategy, they have schools dedicated to teaching combat. They have museums that preserve weapons from centuries past. Commander, war is not something they do. War is something they are. Thexler stared at the intelligence officer. Explain. He demanded. Krevna brought up images on the main display. This is what they call a castle, a fortification from their medieval period. Note how similar it is to our current defensive positions. They were building military architecture like this 1,000 years ago. This is something they call combined arms tactics. Using different types of forces in coordination, they developed this concept in their ancient period and have been refining it ever since. This is what they call guerrilla warfare. Fighting from concealment, using hit-and-run tactics. They have been doing this for millennia. The display showed example after where. Example, human cavalry charges from centuries. Past infantry formations from ancient battles in Avel. Tactics from a Juvzil warfare trench. Warfare from their first global conflict, Blitzkrieg from there. Second counterinsurgency from their recent wars. Every tactic they are using against us has historical precedent. Krivana concluded they are not improvising. They are adapting lessons learned from thousands of years of constant warfare. Commander, we have made a grave error. We thought their divisions made them weak. We did not realize that their constant conflict made them the most experienced warriors in the galaxy. Thexler felt something he had never experienced before in his long military career. Fear. Send a message to the Dominion Council. He ordered. Request reinforcements. Significant reinforcements. But even as the message was sent, Dexler suspected it might already be too late. The humans were not just fighting back, they were learning, adapting, evolving their tactics with each engagement, and most terrifying of all, they were beginning to smile when they fought. Zelvari troops reported that some human soldiers seemed to enjoy combat. They told stories of humans laughing as they charged Zelvari positions, of human commanders making jokes over their communication channels. Even as battles raged, the Zelvari fought because they had to. The humans fought because some dark part of them wanted to. Commander Thexler looked at the casualty reports and realized he had not conquered Earth, he had awakened it. 3 months after the invasion began, the war had transformed into something the Zelvari Dominion had never imagined possible. They were losing not quickly, but steadily, inexorably, and the humans were doing things that violated every principle of warfare. The Zelvari understood. In a garage in Detroit, a former automotive engineer named Marcus Chen was doing something remarkable. He had gotten his hands on a damaged Zelvari shield generator, recovered from a downed landing craft, working with parts from old cars, household electronics, and some equipment stolen from a community college physics lab. He had built a device that could disrupt Zelvari shields within a 20-meter radius. He posted the schematics online within a week. Thousands of these devices were being built in basements, workshops, and factories across the planet. The Zelvari had guarded their technology for centuries. Humans were open-sourcing it on something they called the Internet. In Mumbai, a chemistry professor named Dr. Priya Sharma had analyzed the composition of Zelvar hull materials from debris. She discovered they were vulnerable to a specific type of acid that could be synthesized from common industrial chemicals. She published her findings in a scientific paper during an alien invasion. Other chemists refined her work within 2 weeks. Human forces were using chemical weapons specifically designed to eat through Zelvari armor, not the chemical weapons banned by human conventions, but new compounds created specifically for this enemy. In Tel Aviv, a teenager named Yael Goldstein, who had been coding since she was 8 years old, did something that made the Zelvari intelligence core panic. She hacked into Zelvari communications. Their encryption, considered unbreakable, Hadaflowet was designed to be secure against Zelvari thinking patterns. Eel did not think like a Zelvarish, thought like a human who had grown up playing computer games, solving puzzles and breaking into systems for fun ones inside. She did not sabotage their communications. She listened. She learned their protocols, their command structures, their tactical language. Then she shared it all with human military intelligence. Suddenly, Human forces knew what the Zelvari were planning before they acted on bushes were set traps were lad the Zelvari began to feel like they were fighting an enemy that could read their minds, but perhaps the most disturbing development from the Zelvari perspective came from what humans did with their prisoners. The Zelvari expected torture, expected execution, expected anything except what actually happened when human forces overran a Zelvari outpost in Australia. They took 37 prisoners. The Zelvari soldiers prepared for death instead. They were given medical treatment. Their injuries were tended by human doctors who worked carefully around their alien physiology. They were given food, not Zelvari rations, which the humans did not have, but carefully prepared meals that human nutritionists had formulated based on analysis of Zelvari biology. They were housed in clean facilities with appropriate environmental controls, and then the interrogations began, but these were not like any interrogations the Zelvari had experienced. The humans did not use pain, they used conversations. Linguists and intelligence officers sat with Zelvar prisoners for hours. They asked about Zelvari families, about their home world, about their fears and hopes, about what they missed from home. The humans were not trying to break the prisoners, they were trying to understand them, and in understanding them, the humans found vulnerabilities. They learned that Zelvari soldiers were conscripts, not volunteers, that many did not support the Dominion's expansion, that they had families they wanted to return to. Armed with this knowledge, human psychological warfare units began broadcasting messages to Zelvari troops. The messages were not threats, they were questions. Does your family know where you are? Does the Dominion care if you survive? How many of your comrades have died for a war they did not choose? You can surrender, we will treat you well. You can go home when this is over. The messages were broadcast in perfect Zelvari language, using idioms and cultural references that showed deep understanding. They were accompanied by footage of Zelvari prisoners being treated well, playing games, even laughing with human guard. Zelvari troops began to desert not in large numbers at first, but the trickle was steady. Each deserter was treated exactly as promised, with dignity, medical care, and comfort. Commander Vexler watched his forces deteriorate in ways he could not combat. How do we fight an enemy that turns our own troops against us without firing a shot? He demanded. His officers had no answer back on the Zelvari homeworld. The Dominion Council reviewed the reports from Earth. With growing alarm, they are adapting our technology faster than we can deploy it, one counselor noted. They are using psychological tactics we have never encountered, said another. They fight with a creativity that suggests they enjoy the challenge, observed a third. The Supreme Counselor, eldest of the Zelvari leadership, made a decision. Send the full records of human history to our analysts. What she ordered. I want to know what we are truly facing. The analysts worked for days, processing thousands of years of human recorded history. What they found was horrifying. Humans had fought wars for religion, for land, for resources, for ideology, for pride, for revenge, and sometimes, apparently, for no reason at all. They had developed weapons of staggering variety: Zords, spears, bows, crossbows, guns, cannons, tanks, aircraft, missiles, and nuclear weapons. Each generation had found new ways to kill more efficiently. But they had also developed an equally impressive array of defenses: shields, armor, fortifications, tactics, strategies, and doctrines for every method of attack. They had created a counter for every weapon. They had developed a defense. It was an arms race that had lasted millennia. It had never stopped, even in times of peace. Humans prepared for war. If they wrote books about it, they taught it in schools. They made games about it. They created entertainment about it. War was woven into the fabric of human culture so deeply that it was inseparable from their identity. But the most disturbing finding was this: humans did not just fight to win, they fought to survive. And there was a difference. Species that fought to win would surrender when victory became impossibly. Species that fought to survive would never surrender, would never stop, would never quit, would fight with sticks and stones. If necessary, would fight until the last human drew their last breath. A Zelvari analyst who compiled the final report included a personal note at the end: recommendation, immediate Withdrawal from the human homeworld. Secondary recommendation. Avoid all future contact with humans. Tertiary recommendation. If withdrawal is not possible, prepare for total war. This species does not have a word for acceptable. Losses because they consider all losses acceptable if it means survival. They will sacrifice cities to save their world. They will sacrifice millions to save billions. They have done it before in their own wars. They will not hesitate to do it to us. Commander Wexler, read the report in his quarters. He had been a military officer. For 50 years he had fought on 20 different worlds. Had never retreated from a battle. He drafted a message to the Dominion Council recommending full withdrawal from Earth, but before he could send it, alarms blared throughout his ship. Commander, human forces are launching a major offensive, multiple fronts, coordinated across their entire planet. They are using captured Zelvari weapons alongside their primitive arms they are deploying. The shield disruptors they are advancing on all our ground positions simultaneously. Wexler rushed to the bridge on the displays. He saw something that made his blood freeze. The humans were not just attacking, they were winning, and they were doing it while broadcasting a message. On all Zelvari frequencies, the message was simple. You wanted Earth, come and take it. The turning point came when humanity stopped defending and started hunting 6 months after the invasion began. A fleet of ships bearing the flags of 32 nations launched from Earth. They were not elegant vessels. They were not beautiful. They were cobbled together from whatever humanity could build. Steel or salvage Zelvari hulls repaired with human welding, human engines mounted on alien frames, weapons. Systems that combined both technologies in ways that made no sense to traditional engineering but worked anyway. Fleet commander was Admiral Elena Volkov of the Russian Space Forces, chosen because she had more experience with orbital mechanics than anyone else alive. Her second gun comm was General Jackson Hayes of the United States Space Force. Her tactical officer was Colonel Wei Chen from China. Her chief engineer was Dr. Rajesh Patel from India. The crew spoke 17 different languages, but they all understood one thing. We're all ships. This is Volkov. The Admiral transmitted, our mission is simple. The Zelvari have a staging base on one of Saturn's moons. They use it to resupply their forces attacking Earth. We are going to destroy it. The human fleet had 47 ships. Zelvari had 12 warships defending the base, plus the installation itself with its heavy weapons. On paper, it was not even close to a fair fight. The Zelvari should have won easily. They did not. The human fleet approached in a formation no Zelvari tactician would have used. They spread out, each ship taking a different vector, moving at different speeds. The Zelvari defenders prepared to engage, but they could not decide which ship to target first. The human vessels were not following any logical attack pattern. Then the first wave hit 20 small craft. It's barely more than engines with cockpits, accelerated to incredible speeds. They were suicide. Ships each carried a human pilot and enough explosives to cripple a Zelvari cruisers. The Zelvari tried to shoot them down, but there were too many coming from too many directions. 8 made it through. 8 Zelvari ships took critical damage. The human pilots died in the explosions. They had volunteered. Every single one had volunteered before the Zelvari could recover. The main fleet opened fire. They used every weapon they had, missiles, railguns, energy weapons copied from Zelvari technology, and even old nuclear warheads fired from magnetic launchers. The Zelvari shields held against some of it, but not all of it, not nearly all of it. In the chaos, human marines did something the Zelvari thought was insane. They boarded enemy ships in space through hull breaches, wearing nothing but modified spacesuits and carrying cutting tools and weapons. The Zelvari were not trained for boarding actions. No species, in their experience, fought in zero gravity inside damaged ships. Humans did. Human marines used the three-dimensional environment to their advantage. They moved through ventilation shafts. They breached from unexpected angles. They set traps in corridors. They hacked life support systems. One team of 5 American Navy SEALs captured a Zelvar destroyer by depressurizing the command deck and forcing the crew to evacuate into sections the humans had already secured. The battle for the Saturn base lasted 18 hours. When it was over, the Zelvari installation was destroyed. One of the 12 defending ships were disabled or destroyed. The human fleet had lost 19 vessels, over 3,000 human casualties, but they had won, and more importantly, They had proven something humans could fight in space. Admiral Volkov transmitted a message back to Earth. Mission accomplished. Saturn base destroyed. Zelvari supply line severed. Returning home. But General Hayes had a different idea. Admiral, request permission to speak freely, he said. Granted, Volkov replied. We shouldn't go home. Hayes said we should press the attack. The Zelvari fleet in Earth orbit is weakened. They sent ships to defend this base. They lost those ships. If we hit them now, we can break them. Volkov considered this traditional military doctrine, said to return, resupply, repair. But humans did not always follow traditional doctrine. What do the other commanders think? She asked. The question went out to every ship captain. In the fleet, the response was unanimous. The human fleet turned toward Earth. But they did not approach directly. They used the gravity of Jupiter to slingshot themselves on an unexpected trajectory. BROADCAST false transmissions to make it seem like they were still at Saturn. They went silent for the final approach when they emerged from behind the moon. The Zelvari fleet orbiting Earth was completely unprepared. Commander Exler saw the human ships on his sensors and felt his heart sink. They should have retreated. He said, why did they not retreat? Intelligence Officer Krevina had been studying humans long enough to understand because they are human. He said simply, and humans do not retreat when they sense weakness. The battle for Earth orbit was brutal and short. The Zelvari fleet was down to 8 capital ships after months of attrition. They were tired. Their crews were demoralized. Many were conscripts who no longer believed in the Dominion's mission. The human fleet was battered and undermanned. They were fighting for their homeworld, and they were angry. Admiral Volkov employed tactics pulled from naval warfare, going back centuries feints, and flanking maneuvers, concentration of force at weak points, sacrificing smaller ships to create openings for larger ones. The Zelvari tried to respond, but they were fighting an enemy that had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of naval combat. The fact that this was happening in space instead of on water did not matter. The principles were the same. 3 Zelvari ships tried to retreat. Human fighters pursued them, not to destroy them, but to herd them, to push them into positions where the main fleet could bring overwhelming firepower to bear. It was Wolfpack Tactics. Predator Tactics. 5 hours into the battle, Commander Thexler made a decision that would have been unthinkable when the invasion began. He surrendered all Zelvari ships. Cease fire, he transmitted. We surrender to the human forces. I repeat, we surrender. Admiral Volkov received the transmission with surprise. The human fleet had been preparing for a fight to the death. They had not expected surrender all ships. Cease fire, she ordered. Maintain defensive positions. Stand by for instructions. She opened a direct channel to Thexler's ship. This is Admiral Volkov of the combined human fleet. We accept your surrender. Power down your weapons and shields. Prepare to be boarded. Any attempt to resume hostilities will result in the complete destruction of your fleet. Do you understand? You stand? Thexler replied. For the first time in 300 years of Dominion expansion, Zelvari fleet had surrendered in battle. The news spread across Earth like wildfire in cities that had been battlegrounds for months. People emerged from shelters. Soldiers who had been fighting street to street lowered their weapons. Scientists who had been working 20-hour days in laboratories finally allowed themselves to rest. Humanity had won, but the celebration was tempered by a sobering reality. Over 2 million humans had died in the war. Dozens of cities were in ruins. The global economy was shattered, and there was still the question of what to do next. An emergency session of the United Nations, now relocated to Geneva after New York had taken heavy damage. World leaders debated the future. Some called for the execution of all Zelvari prisoners. Some demanded the Zelvari be enslaved as they had intended for humanity. Some wanted to send a fleet to the Zelvari homeworld and return the favor of invasion. But there were other voices. 2 scientists who wanted to learn from Zelvari technology, diplomats who saw an opportunity for humanity to join the galactic community, philosophers who argued that becoming like the Zelvari would mean losing what made humanity human. The debate lasted for 3 days. In the end, a resolution passed by a narrow margin. Humanity would not seek revenge. They would seek something more ambitious. They would seek the stars, but first they would send a message. Admiral Volkov was given the honor of composing it. She thought for a long time about what to say. Finally, She transmitted a message to the Zelvari homeworld people of the Zelvari Dominion. This is Admiral Alina Volkov speaking on behalf of the United Nations of Earth. Your fleet came to our world seeking conquest, they found warrior commander. Has surrendered. Your troops are now our prisoners. But we are not the enemy you thought we were. We do not seek to destroy you. We seek only to defend what is ours. Let this be a lesson to any who would threaten Earth. We are humanity, we have survived ice ages and plagues, we have survived wars among ourselves that killed millions. We have survived everything our own world could throw at us, and now we have survived you. Do not mistake our mercy for weakness. Do not mistake our offer of peace for fear. We are coming to the stars, and when we arrive, you will have a choice. Stand with us or stand aside, but do not stand against us. You have seen what happens when you do the message ended and humanity began preparing for the next phase. They had won the war for Earth, now they would win the peace and their terms. 3 years after the Zelvari invasion began, a much larger human fleet entered Zelvari space. The war had changed humanity in ways both terrible and magnificent. Was still rebuilding cities that had been reduced to rubble were rising again, often incorporating Zelvari technology into their new designs. Global economy had shifted entirely to a wartime footing and then evolved into something new, a unified planetary industrial complex for the first time in human history. There was a single governing body that spoke for the entire species, the United Earth Council, composed of representatives from every nation, had authority over matters of planetary defense and interstellar relations. National governments still existed for domestic affairs, but humanity had learned the value of unity. The fleet that now approached the Zelvari homeworld numbered 147 ships. Every vessel had been built specifically for this mission. They combined the best of human engineering with captured Zelvari technology, but more importantly, they carried crews that represented the absolute best humanity had to offer. The mission commander was no longer Admiral Volkovac. He had retired after the battle for Earth orbit. Satisfied that she had done her part, the new commander was General Marcus Ironcloud, a Lakota officer from the United States who had distinguished himself during the ground war. His tactical team included officers from 23 different nations. His science team spoke 11 languages. His medical staff had trained in both human and Zelvari physiology. All ships. This is Ironcloud, the general transmitted as the fleet entered the Zelvar home system. Remember our mission. We are not here for revenge. We are here to end this war permanently. We will use whatever force is necessary, but only what is necessary rules. Engagement are in effect no targeting of civilian infrastructure, no unnecessary casualties. We are better than they were. Prove it. The Zelvari Dominion had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. They knew humanity would come. They had built new defenses around their home world. They had recalled fleets from other systems. They had conscripted millions of new soldiers. The Zelvari Supreme Council had debated surrender, but pride and fear had won out. They would defend their world. They had to. The human fleet's approach did not go unnoticed. Said Zelvari long-range sensors detected them days before arrival. Defense fleets moved into position. Orbital weapons platforms powered up the homeworld's population of 3 billion. Zelvari prepared for invasion, but the humans did something unexpected. Instead of attacking immediately, they stopped just outside weapons range and they broadcast a message. People of Zelvari, this is General Marcus's Ironcloud of the United Earth Defense Force. We have come to your home system not to conquer, but to end this war. 3 years ago, your fleets attacked our world without provocation. You sought to enslave our people. You failed. We understand that many of you did not choose this war. We understand that many of you are conscripts, forced to fight by your government. We understand that you have families, hopes, and dreams. Just as we do not wish to harm you, but we will not allow this war to continue. We demand the unconditional surrender of the Zelvar Dominion in return. We offered terms. The message then outlined something that shocked the Zelvari Council. Humanity was offering peace, not just cessation of hostilities, but actual peace. The terms included immediate release of all prisoners on both sides, demilitarization of Zelvari forces to defensive levels only, reparations to be paid in technology and knowledge, not lives establishment of a joint human Zelvari council to prevent future conflicts, full sharing of scientific and medical knowledge, free trade between Earth and Zelvari worlds, the Zelvari Council met in emergency session. They are offering us mercy. 1. Counselor said in disbelief it is a trick. Another insisted they want us to lower our defenses. The Supreme Counselor, who had led the Dominion for 30 years, studied the human message carefully. Is it a trick? She asked Intelligence Director Krevona, who had been recalled from the Earth's campaign. Krevna, who had spent more time studying humans than any other Zelvari, shook his head. No, he said, this is what humans do. They fight with terrifying ferocity when threatened. But they are equally capable of remarkable compassion. Their history is full of bitter enemies becoming allies after wars ended. They fought to global wars in the 20th century, and the losing nations are now among the most prosperous and peaceful on their world. They rebuilt their enemies after defeating them. It is incomprehensible to us. But it is how they think. The Supreme Counselor considered this. And if we refuse their terms, she asked, then they will destroy us. Krevana said simply, not out of cruelty, but because they will see no other option. And they have the capability to do it. The council debated for hours. Pride fought against pragmatism. Military officers insisted they could win. Civilians begged for peace. In the end, reality prevailed. The Zelvari had lost. The war continuing would only increase the casualties. The Supreme Counselor composed a response. General Ironcloud, this is Supreme Counselor Thexera of the Zelvari Dominion. We accept your terms. We surrender. Unconditionally, we request that you honor your promises regarding treatment of our people. General Ironcloud received the message and felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Surrender accepted, he replied. We will honor our promises. Prepare to receive diplomatic envoys. The war was over. What followed? Shocked, the galaxy human ships entered Zelvari space not as conquerors, but as aid workers. Engineers helped rebuild damaged Zelvari infrastructure. Doctors shared medical technology that saved thousands of Zelvari lives. Teachers established exchange programs. The most remarkable sight was in the Zelvari capital city, where former enemies worked side by side to repair war. Damaged human construction workers operated alongside Zelvari laborers. Human medics treated Zelvari civilians in field hospitals. Human children and Zelvari juveniles played together in refugee centers. Commander Vexler, who had led the initial invasion of Earth, was released from human custody. He expected execution or imprisonment. Instead, he was offered a position on the new Joint Council. Why? He asked General Ironcloud when they met. You invaded my world, Ironcloud replied. You killed millions of my people, but holding a grudge will not bring them back. Building a better future might prevent more deaths. We need people who understand both sides. You understand the Zelvari military mindset. You also understand that humans are not to be underestimated. That makes you valuable. Vexler accepted the position. He spent the rest of his life working to prevent the kind of war he had started. The news of humanity's victory spread through the galaxy via the Galactic Communication Network. Other species, who had been unaware of either humans or Zelvari, suddenly learned about both. The Galactic Council, a loose organization of advanced species, received reports with alarm. New species had appeared, defeated a known aggressive empire, and then helped rebuild that empire. Instead of destroying it, the Council dispatched a delegation to Earth. They arrived to find a world still scarred by war but bustling with activity. Humans were rebuilding cities with a speed that seemed impossible. They were launching new ships. Weekly, they were expanding into their solar system, establishing bases on Mars, mining asteroids, building stations around Jupiter. The delegation's leader, Ambassador Quillen of the Arzer Collective, met with the United Earth Council. We have come to formally acknowledge humanity's presence in the galaxy. Quillen said, we have reviewed the records of your war with the Zelvari Dominion. We are prepared to offer Earth membership in the Galactic Council. The human ambassador, Dr. Sarah Chen, smiled. We appreciate the offer. She said, but we have conditions. Quellen was surprised. New species usually begged for council membership. What conditions? He asked first. The Zelvari Dominion must also be offered membership. Dr. Chen said second. Any species that has been oppressed by the Dominion must be freed and given the option of independence third. The Council must establish rules preventing unprovoked invasions like the one we experienced fourth. Humanity reserves the right to maintain our military at levels we determine appropriate for our defense. These are non-negotiable. Quellen considered the demands. They were reasonable. But they showed something important. Humanity was not asking for permission to join galactic society. They were setting terms for their participation. I will relay your conditions to the Council, Quellen said, but I am curious why insist on membership for the Zelvari. They attacked you. Dr. Chen's expression grew. Serious because we learned something important during the war, she said. The Zelvari Dominions. Expansion was driven by fear and scarcity there. Homeworld lacks certain resources. Their government used conquest to obtain what they needed. If we exclude them from the galactic community, we guarantee future conflicts. If we include them, we give them alternatives to war. Besides, she added with a slight smile, keeping your former enemies close is a very human strategy. The Galactic Council accepted Earth's conditions, both humanity and the reformed Zelvari collective. No longer a dominion. Joined the council of their species that had been under Zelvari control, where liberated humans helped many of them rebuild. Sharing technology and expertise freely within a decade, Earth became one of the most influential members of the Galactic Council, not because of military might, though they maintained formidable defenses, not because of threats or intimidation.